And we are officially live and recording and ready to rock and roll on the toolbar, part 2. Part 1 was last week, part 2 this week, and hopefully we'll finish it off really quick. It should be easy. Not a whole lot of information we didn't cover, so. And let's go ahead and make sure we're doing this right. Share screen, Photoshop. Can everybody see my screen going on?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Let me close out Nick Filters. And did we do the clone stamp last week? Or did we get down to the clone stamp?
We didn't do it.
Okay. And we did mixer brush a little bit. So let's go ahead and start with the clone stamp. Clone stamp's pretty simple. Let's take, for instance, her eyes right here. And before you can clone anything, you have to Option or Alt click the area that you want to clone from. So if I hold the Option or Alt button, you can see it changes my big brush to a target. So I'm going to click on her eyeball, and then as I move, make my brush a little smaller, move it to the center of her forehead. There we go. She now has a third eye. You'll notice on my upper toolbar, I have it set to current and below for the sample area. You can do all masks. It doesn't matter, all layers. I'm sorry, not all masks, all layers. And it will sample all the layers that you're working with. If you're working on a layer, like if I have multiple layers on here and I'm working below a layer, it won't sample the layer above it if it's current and below. Flow should be at 100%. I don't know why it's at 80%, but also in preferences, you can turn off where it's going to, if I sample there and I start to do it on her forehead again, you can see it's telling me what it's going to brush with. So if I just do a little bit, it shows. And the reason for that is when you're doing straight lines, you can line up your lines really easy and make sure that the line goes straight across without getting a jag in the middle of it. Let me see if I've got a building I can work with real quick. Photoshop class.
Michael, if that gal is a mother, that third eye should be in the back of her head.
Now she's a band member of Third Eye Blind. Okay, I'll mute myself.
I was going to ask if this is what happens when you get fully vaccinated.
Okay, I'm going to hit
What
the
are the
record.
unpublished side effects?
I'm going to hit the record button and start over again. I don't want people to have to listen to all these wonderful.
Yeah, you're right. You got to keep an eye on them.
Ooh.
I guess the eyes have it. Let's move on.
Oh,
Michael, you've lost control already.
I know, right?
I lost control a long time ago.
Okay, so you got the old homestead there.
I got the old homestead here. This is a different example that I use it for, but we'll do this. I'm going to put the line across the door. So I'm going to hold the Option or Alt key, and I click right on that line there. So let me zoom in so you can see where I'm at. And we'll go S for clone stamp. And I'm going to hold the Option key down. And you can see that I'm lining up my line that I'm working with there. And all I have to do is figure out why it's not doing this. There is, okay, let's resample on the left-hand side, go across, make sure the line is lined up. Wow. Okay, brush is set to normal, opacity 100, flow 100, aligned. Soft edge brush. Okay, if I knew the answer
You
to
have to
why,
hit shift, Mike. How
no,
about shift?
no,
Okay.
shift would just make it go in a straight line.
What about your layers?
Let's go with the soft round brush. I have no layers, I don't believe, or do I? I do have a layer. Ah, thank you. Turn the layers. Let's do this. Flatten the image. I was on the mask is why it was doing that. Okay. Could not because you didn't sample. Okay, sample. Make sure you're lined up. And now I don't have to line up anything else from now on. It's all lining up. And you can see my cursor on the left. I wanted to point on my screen just now. Holy crap, I'm having a good day.
I can't see that, Michael.
Yeah, should I put another eyeball in your forehead? You can see on the left-hand side, about in the middle, there's the little crosshairs. It shows where it's sampling from right now. And you can see my lines as I go lower and lower,
Right.
the lines are starting to get off. So what I would have to do is resample and then make sure they're going across there. Wow. That was supposed to be a simple object to deal with.
It's Photoshop. Nothing is simple.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay, close that. Command W, D for don't save. History. Go back out of the clone stamp, get her face back to normal. Okay.
Did you just say D for don't save?
I did.
Okay, that was worth the price of admission today. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, I have a question for you about the clone stamp.
Okay.
I have heard that using the clone stamp, as opposed to the healing brush tool, is better because it gives you more definition and it's crisper. Do you find that?
It takes the texture and the color from the area you're cloning. So let's, on this image, let me show the healing or the history brush real quick, and then I will go back to the clone stamp. So what I want to do is I want to take her eyeballs out, some of her eyeballs out. So I'm going to go to the history brush and I'm going to paint over the eyeball right here and go back to where it was very beginning. You can do it, say 50%, and only take out 50% of what you painted in. The history brush basically goes back to where your history brush is located. And right now mine is set to the original version, basically in the open. If I move down to, say, the last clone that I put on, and I go to the history brush, oops, I forgot to do that. Hang on. Clone stamp.
50%.
No, it's also, I didn't click that box right there. That's going to tell me what I want the history to go to. So type 0 to go to opacity 100. And you can see it's not taking it out. So if I do stamp, oh, you want me to do it again? Okay. So let's do option. Let's do option. Put an eyeball down here. Okay. Right now, my current state that I have as history is the last clone stamp prior to that. So if I hit Y for history brush, I can paint out this eye, which is done after the last history state there that we have selected. So I paint it out. But if I try to paint out this eye, nothing's going to happen because the clone stamp is at this point in the history. So, or the history brush is there. So if I go up to the spot healing brush, which is where I did some minor retouching on her before I started this, and paint out her eye, the history brush will take it out. So let's go back. And the question about the clone stamp, if I wanted to say this is a really good area of skin right here, and I click on it to do the cloning over here, you can see the color doesn't match. Whereas, go back 2 states. If I did, say, the spot healing brush, oops, that's the brush, spot healing brush, all I have to do is go over here and it will take out spots that don't belong, but leaves the texture in there. I have it set for type to content aware. You can create texture, you can do proximity match. It depends on which one you want to do. If I go just a healing brush and let's say option click there and paint over here, it puts the texture in that you have there as well. But also my brush is set to a hard edge brush. So you can see where I did it. Go back one and then make it a smaller brush. You can see it does keep the texture from where I was doing it before. It takes that texture and puts it in there. So they both do the same thing almost. The cloning stamp just takes the pixels from wherever you want it taken from and puts it on the other spot. So if I took this area here, it adds the color and also the texture of the skin and everything else, all the imperfections back in there. And again, with this, like the other brushes, you can do different things. Let's say I wanted to get rid of the zip marks over here. So let's take the skin over here, option click over here. I'm going to change the brush from normal to, let's say, lighten, and paint over the, and it's pretty much going over just the darker areas. But then I get into here where the skin's a little bit darker, and it will change the color as well. If I go to darken or multiply, either one, and did the same thing over here, no matter what I do in this area, it's not going to darken it because it's looking for pixels that are darker and those are lighter along the shadow line of the cheek. So just play around, figure out which one you like the most, and go from there.
So I might have missed it, but
Okay.
What really is the difference between the healing brush tool and the clone tool? I mean, do you get better resolution if you use the clone tool? I'm not talking about the spot healing brush. I'm talking about the healing brush tool and the clone.
I use the spot healing brush all the time. I don't normally use the healing brush itself. The healing brush will keep the texture in there and will keep the colors better. So let's say I click on a cheek over here. What? Healing brush. Thank you. Option click. Thank you. Come over here. And it pretty much just takes the texture that you have from her cheek right here and puts it wherever you're painting at. I'm painting on her other cheek right now. Whereas if I took the clone tool, it's basically just a copy and paste brush. So I'll copy and then I'll paste over here. And you can see that it did the color. I did darken. Never mind. Let me do apples to apples, normal mode. And it took the color and made it darker there. So basically, it's just a copy and paste brush. Does that make sense? Whereas the healing brush itself isn't a copy and paste. It takes the texture and blends it into the tone that you have.
So you're saying the healing does more blending?
The healing does more blending, yes.
Okay.
In my opinion. I don't use the clone stamp very often. I do for straight lines and trying to match up areas, I'll use the clone stamp, but most of the time I'll use the healing brush.
Well, maybe you're saying that it's not to spend too much time on this, but maybe you're saying the healing brush blends more because when you set your mark on one cheek, it moves when you're painting it onto the other cheek. But with the clone, it's staying within inside what you have targeted as your clone.
The clone will just copy and paste pixels.
Yeah.
So where the healing brush itself, or I use spot healing most of the time if I'm doing blemishes on the face, like on the bottom of her right or left, I just go in and zap them. And it depends on what you're doing with the healing brush versus the clone stamp. If you're looking just to copy something like the eyeballs we put on the forehead, clone stamp is perfect for that. Healing brush, not so much. In fact, let's do healing brush tool, and option click. Where the clone stamp went in really fast and did that for us. The healing brush, not so much.
Got it. Thanks.
So it just depends on what you're trying to do with it.
Sure.
Okay. Along with the, yes.
The healing brush, or excuse me, the cloning tool is extremely handy for doing, taking care of halos that appear due to sizing or over sharpening or things like that. Using the healing brush in the darken mode or the lighten mode, depending upon what the halo looks like.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah. Each of the tools have things where they're really, really fantastic at, and some of the tools have things that they really suck at. Yeah. You just have to play with them over and over and over to figure out which ones you really like and which ones you want to use for what job.
Yeah. Paul Speaker taught me that years ago, and I've used it ever since. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, using multiplier darken mode to get rid of the lighter spots, and vice versa for the darker spots. Another thing we have here is in the history brush, in the same thing as the art history brush. And art history brush, make sure. Is something that's really bizarre. And I'm going to use it at 20%. And you've got different modes up here. You've got loose medium, loose long. You've got tight medium, tight short, long, all these things. Let's just go loose medium for fun. Area, I'm going to do, say, 26 pixels just to pick one out. And I just paint over the top of it. And what it does is pushes pixels around. So it makes a Picasso kind of a painting. Tight curl long. This is probably not a good image for working with. Let me pull one up real quick. Let's do this guy for. You can see it's making a Picasso kind of image, just pushing pixels around. Oh, I'm at 20%. No wonder. Let's do 100%. And it can do pressure sensitive with the Wacom tablet, which I'm not using right now. I'm just using my mouse. And then you can go back with your history brush, the regular history brush. History, thank you. And we'll go back with, say, 20 or 50% opacity and just kind of paint things back in a little bit. So you can make a weird, bizarre looking picture using the art history brush, which very few people even play with anymore. Let's go back to open on him. Thank you. Okay. I normally don't keep it in my toolbar up there. Eraser tool. I'm not a big fan of the eraser tool. It has a place where you can use it. It just basically erases things out of the image. And why is that going? Huh. That is the weirdest thing. Let's try this. Command J will make a copy of it. Go to this layer, move this layer around a little bit. E for eraser tool. Okay, we got rid of 1/2 of the bird. And then we'll put our text on here. Something fun like lorem. And then go brush. Yeah, whatever. Let's go brush something on there. Change the colors. Okay, now that you've used your eraser tool, you have to go back. Well, luckily it's only 3 states because it's 2 brush tools. Let's do brush, 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 brush. You have to go back all those states to undo your eraser that you did. If you're only doing like a really small area, just erasing out a pixel or two, eraser brush is okay. I would much rather use, God, my brain is fried today. I would much rather use layer masks to where you can paint it back again. I can't paint back the wing that I took off because it's a permanent deal. And to work without ruining your image, layer mask you can change anytime you want. So that's what I don't like about the eraser tool. Also in the eraser tool is, let's go and do it on a duplicate layer. You have the background eraser tool. Let's go to the eraser tool, background eraser tool, and I'm just going to erase out the background. Let me turn off the bottom layer. And you can see that it's taking out the background, but not the bird. I've never had really good luck with this. I've always struggled trying to get just the background and not the object that I want. With the object selection tool now, obviously it's much better at doing this. Some people live with this and love it. Me personally, not so much. You can play with it, see if you really like it. If you do, great. You also have the magic eraser tool. I've never really played with the magic eraser tool. Whoops. It's almost like object selection, so it's not bad. but select object and some of the other selection tools are much better at doing this than the magic eraser tool. So those don't even reside in my toolbar. I don't need that in the toolbar. If I want to use an eraser tool, I just say E for eraser and I'm good to go. Gradient tools. Okay, gradient. You can spend a whole day on the gradient tool. Especially when your top toolbar disappears. Wow, interesting. Why are you doing this to me? There we go. Back in, okay. Let me make a new blank layer and I'm going to put a gradient across here. It's a yellow to gold gradient that I made a couple weeks ago. If you're doing the text tool that we did, making the gold text, we did that. You can change the mode on here, going down in the layer panel, and you can see that what it did was golden up or warmed up the area a little bit, less blue. So let's go ahead and change this to one of our basic ones. And we'll go, in this particular case, I'm going to add a layer mask and I'm going to use black to white. And you can't really see it very well, so let's go ahead and darken this one down real quick. I'm going to use a curves adjustment layer. I'm going to darken it way down so you can see what we're doing. Command E to make it down there. And so if I turn the mask on and off, you can see what it did. So let's, whoa, helps if you select the right tool. Okay. You can see the upper left-hand corner is the dark area. And you can see on the mask, that's the dark area as well. If you decide, well, I didn't want it that way, I wanted it the other way, just drag it the other way and it changes it. If you want it top to bottom, bottom to top, it will keep changing it for you. That's the cool thing about the gradient tool is you can keep doing it over and over and it will keep doing it wonderfully. Here's a gradient to show you. Boom. I did it the wrong way. Okay, go the other way. And the way to tell which way your gradient is going, if you look at the left side of the gradient, it's white right now. So if I slide left to right like the gradient shows up there, it starts with white, and in the picture it started with white. If you do a short gradient, you get a harsher edge. If you do a longer gradient, you can see it fades the gradient a lot better. So a couple of different gradients you have. You have a radial gradient, which is really cool for doing sunspots, etc. Command I will make it the opposite. You also have an angle gradient. Let's go and fill that with white. And we'll do an angle gradient. You can see it comes down at an angle there. One of the things about gradients you got to watch is, I don't know if you can see the banding in here along the light area going into the dark. There's a lot of banding, so you got to be careful with that.
How do you avoid that?
I'm not sure that you can work in 16-bit. This is the angle gradient.
Can I ask another question?
Of course.
When I use a gradient tool, it adds to what I had. It doesn't switch it. So is there some setting that I have differently than yours?
Well, when I did the linear gradient, I could change it over and over and over.
Yeah, when I did the linear gradient,
When I do the radial gradient, same thing. I can change it over and over and over. When I get to the angle gradient, it starts adding to it, as you can see there. I don't know the answer to that one.
yeah, when I do the linear gradient, it adds to it. So I don't know what my settings are that are different than yours.
I wish I knew the answer to that one. I don't know, because all of a sudden it started doing that today. Okay, that is reflected gradient, and it changes each time as well. It doesn't add to it. So I don't know. That one filter is doing that for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay.
Michael,
Yes.
when you're talking about or answering the question on the problem with the gradients having the lines appear, Ella the other day was saying that used to be a major problem for her, and what she discovered by doing it is putting it in, as you say, the 16-bit side, and before ever downsizing it, adding a maybe about 1 or 2 pixel screen over it, and evidently that helps the program differentiate appropriately or better as it does the gradient.
Okay. I will watch her videos because I didn't get a chance to attend last week. And I'll watch her video to see what she's talking about, be able to show everybody next week easily. I hope, maybe. But the answer to the question, like on the angle gradient that's doing multiple, you can see it's covering up over and over and over. I don't know why it's doing that. I don't know the answer to that. So, sorry, Jeannie, I don't know that answer.
Well, pretty cool effects with that angle one. You can make some.
Yeah, you can do some cool stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't want that.
Yeah, that's right.
And I wish I had the answer that I don't.
Okay.
Also in the gradient tools, the paint bucket tool. For those that haven't used the paint bucket before, I'm going to go default colors, and all you do is click on the area, and it will fill with the default color that you have. I have no use for the paint bucket tool anymore, because if I want to change it to blue, change my color to blue real quick. And if I wanted to fill, instead of using the paint bucket tool, I'll use Option Delete or Alt Delete, God bless you, or Alt Delete for PC, and it fills it with blue. So to me, the paint bucket tool is obsolete now.
Say that again.
To fill this area, like let's say I want to do it with white right now. White is my foreground color. If I hit Option Delete, God bless you, or if I hit Alt Delete on a PC, it fills it with the foreground color. If I hit Command or Control Delete, it fills it with the background color. So it's much quicker than going and finding your paint bucket tool, which nobody remembers where it's at anyway. Just go really quick and click, boom, you got it done.
So the frame that you created an 8x10. Then you fill it in. That's the way you do it with the Alt Delete.
I could have any picture like her eyes. If I wanted to fill it with blue, I would hit Command Delete because that's my background color. So Command
Okay.
Delete, and now it fills it with blue.
Okay.
You can do it with a selection too.
As far as select the area you want to fill in, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
that. Like if I have, let's do a marquee selection on her forehead, and I wanted to fill it with white, you can just fill it in. I just hit Option Delete. I could have gone and found my paint bucket. It's under here. There it is. And then click with the paint bucket, fill it in. And you can see it didn't fill in all the way because my tolerance level is set to 32. If I bump up to 255, hit paint bucket, it fills in the whole thing.
Oh,
So you can adjust your tolerance with the paint bucket tool versus the fill that we do.
okay.
Okay. Command D to deselect. Next tool down is the Sharpen, Blur, and Smudge tool.
Oh, can I ask one question? You said man, to delete it.
Command Delete will do
And
the
then-
background. Will do the background color.
No, to go back where you were originally. Which one was that? Is that up? Because I'm
Oh.
on a PC.
I was undoing the marquee tool, the selection, so I hit Command D or Control D to deselect.
Okay, Control Delete.
Control D to deselect. Okay, I'm going to start with the Sharpen tool because it's pretty cool. Sharpen tool is something that Sandra Pierce uses a lot to put a lot of texture in the eyes, and it's really cool. You can see that it's building texture in the areas where I'm painting it in. I can see that the eyes are not completely sharp, so. But if I go back to deselect, and then you can see all the texture in the eyes there. That can get overdone very quickly using the Sharpen tool, so you got to be careful how you do that. And one thing I'm going to show you real quick, on the history panel down at the bottom, you have your trash can, you have a camera, and then you have another little tool right there, which is create a new document from the current state. But the camera, I have deselect before I started all my sharpening. So I'm going to click on that. And what that does, it takes a snapshot. And so I'm going to go to the last one and go to snapshot. And you can go back and forth between the two images. So you can look at what you've done between, right now it's on the original, which is a snapshot, down to sharpen, over sharpened. And you can see the texture in her eyes now. But that snapshot, you can go back and forth. You can take as many as you want all the way through, and it'll keep adding snapshots up here so you can go back and forth between what you've been doing. I'm going to take my history brush, and I'm going to run history on this area right here, only because I didn't like it coming out like it did using the sharpening. That's the stairway that's in her eyes. You can see the reflection. So if we take the clone stamp tool, make it a smaller brush, option click, it gets rid of it there. So that's where I would use the clone stamp. In fact, what I would do is option click in this area, get rid of this little spot here, get rid of that big spot there, take some texture from here, bring it in here, and see the difference between the two eyes. You might even go to the next tool down, which we're going to be doing dodge and burn. Let's go straight. Well, let's do the blur tool real quick while we got it open. Blur tool. It's good for blurring out skin. I don't use the blur tool hardly at all. You can blur skin with it or any part you don't want to see sharp. So you have before and after on her right eye. We just blurred the eyelashes something fierce. So it's good for blurring out what you don't want to see. And then also smudge tool. This is great for painting along with the mixer brush. The smudge tool, let's change the mode from light to normal. I can add some really nasty eyelashes. Obviously, I would go much skinnier. If I was using my Wacom tablet, which I'm not right now, I'm using a mouse because the Wacom slows down during Zoom. I can put pressure points on and have the end of it turn into a finer point. But the smudge pool, you can put little tiny hairs in there. Where's my cursor? You can give her really big, fat, gnarly hairs. That's the smudge tool. Normally with me, I have the smudge tool and the mixer brush both set to A, so I can flip back and forth between that. The dodge tool, one of the things about the dodge tool, they've improved it a little bit, but with the dodge tool, it changes colors a little bit. Right now I'm going to do shadows at 15% with the dodge tool. Okay, that brings the shadows up a little bit. Let's go to the midtones. We'll bring those up a little bit, dodging it. And then the highlights, same thing. And you can see the difference between, that's well overdone. You obviously don't want to do that. Then right below it's the burn tool, and we'll do the highlights. Same thing. Do the midtones. And you see it's starting to darken it down pretty good. And then also the shadows. So that's kind of ruined everything from there to making it look really, really bad. You just have to take your time and figure out what you want to do. The exposure should be probably around 10% if you're going to dodge and burn. I have a different technique for dodging and burning, which I've showed before, making a new layer in overlay mode and painting with black or white at 10%, and it makes a big, huge difference. So let's do the right eye with that real quick. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to hold the Option key when I do this, which causes the new layer panel to come up, go down to overlay, and I'm going to fill it with gray, which you won't see it when it does it. And I want to lighten the eye. So I got a brush at, let's say 10%. So I hit 1 in the keyboard for 10%. And you can see at 10% what it's done. It's well overdone. So when you do that, make sure you're careful with, but the thing is, when you do it with this way, it doesn't change the colors like the dodge and burn tool does. They've improved it a little bit, but it still changes, makes the colors go off a little bit. So that's the dodge and burn tool. Where am I? And then you also have the sponge tool, which I've never really used. Drag that to the trash.
Mike, I use that tool to, when I'm doing like a portrait photography, the background, the trees and stuff like that, bring out the greens a little bit more and some of the browns, brings a little bit more pop to it. But you could really overdo it.
You talking about the sponge tool or the dodge and burn?
The sponge tool.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like it will definitely change colors really fast. It's at 50% right now in saturate. So it's saturating her eyebrow. Right. Wow. That looks pretty cool. I almost like
Yeah.
that.
Reminds me of my ex-wife.
Yeah. Gorgeous eyes. By the way, this picture was taken at West Coast School a few years ago when I was in Carl Kaler's class. And this is the raw image straight out of camera. So other than the eyelashes, I would say it's a raw image straight out of camera. So we did dodge and burn and we did sponge. We did the type tool already a couple weeks ago, talking about all the different types. So we'll leave that one alone, but it's in there. You have vertical type and horizontal type. So this would be horizontal type. And it looks like it's going backwards. It is kind of going backwards, isn't it?
It's cool, Mike.
Interesting. Okay. So we did that one, Let's close her out. I hit Command W or Control W to close it. D for don't save. And it's gone. Let me reset my type tool so the next time I go to type, it's not being weird on me. Next tool down is your custom shape tools or your shape tools. If you want to do a rectangle, you can go in and set up a rectangle. You can also soften the corners. You can make hard edge corners and do all kinds of weird stuff to it. You can make a shape. You can make a path. You can change it from a path to just selecting pixels. And you can also have it fill with whatever color you want to fill it with. You have the elliptical tool, which is the same thing, only making an ellipse. If you want to make a perfect circle, you hold the shift key down and it makes a perfect circle for you. That's a good tool to play with because it's basically holding a space for you. So if I wanted to add a picture, say in the square right there, my square is selected. I'll take this picture of the eagle, hit the V for move tool, move my eagle onto here. And the reason it didn't bring the eagle is because I had the gradient selected that I put over the top of it. So let's click on the eagle background, then drag the eagle to there. And if you hit Option when you have layer 1 selected and rectangle 1, right between the tool, if you hit Option, it brings a special arrow down, creating a clipping mask. And now you can move that critter around inside of there. If you don't want to do it that way, you can hit the drop-down menu and create clipping mask, or you can right-click on the area to the right, create clipping mask. Same thing. Clipping masks are beautiful to play with. There's a lot to it, and we could talk about that in another episode, but That was the elliptical tool and the rectangle tool. You've also got triangle tool. Let's fill it with blue because it's a different thing. And you can do the same thing. It's a space holder for you. You have the polygonal tool or polygonal tool. Right now it's set to 5, like a pentagon. You could put in a 15-sided tool at the very top. You can see I have 15 selected up there. So let's make it 15 selected. And that's a 15-edged tool. And they're all going on their own layer. So let's go ahead and do this. Select all the layers, delete. We'll go down to the next tool down below, the line tool. I don't need a line tool, but if you want a line tool, there it is. And we're going to fill it with some kind of green. And now you have a line. And the last one in there, which is used a lot, is the custom shape tool. Custom shape tool. You have so many different shapes available. You got leaf, trees, wild animals, boats, flowers, and then you got your legacy shapes and more. So let's go with the legacy shapes. We'll do an animal. Let's do a kitty cat. Fat kitty. And we'll do, God bless you. We'll make a path and go to filter, render, flame, content layers not directly editable. Okay, fine. I was going to outsmart you. The shape tool, you can have it fill. You can do a path like I did there. So let's do shape. And you can change the color that you want to fill it with anytime you want, just by clicking on a color in the properties panel, or you can come over here and click your color that you want to fill it with. So you go fill. Oops, I did a gradient. I don't want to do that. There you go. My color picker. Go to red and fill it with red. You can put a stroke around it if you want.
Okay, so besides,
Yeah,
so besides the lack of profitability, which is why I'm pulling out,
yeah.
Okay, so that's the shape tool. The next tool I'm going to show you, I highly recommend not using it because you'll get to this point and go, uh-oh, how do I get back? Well, you can drag it and try and get it straight again. Or if you get all ski-waddled, just double click on the tool and it'll bring you back. That's the rotate tool. If you're trying to paint and you want to paint at a certain direction, so I was painting, and I like the direction I'm going, but I want to do, say, the backside. You can go to the rotate tool, which is R, spin it around a little bit more. There we go. Back to my brush, paint. So you can paint without changing your hands. And if you get screwed up, just double click on the rotate tool and it's back to straight up and down again. Or if you get too far out, you can go up to the upper left. It says rotation angle. Right now it's at 74 degrees. Reset view, done. So there's a couple of ways to get out of it. Next is the zoom tool. Hit Z for zoom. And I like to be able to drag, say, my selection over the, like the cat's ears, and have it zoom in on that part. There's also atop the across, you can say resize windows to fit, which is not doing anything at all. Zoom all windows. If you have multiple images open, let's do arrange, tile all vertically. Now I have 2 images open, Command 0, Control 0. So they're both set. And if I zoom all windows, I'm going to zoom in on the cat, and it zooms in on the bird as well at the same time. But when you hit Command 0, it doesn't take it back to 100%. If I hit the hand tool, if you double click on the hand tool, it will resize everything back to basically a Command 0. The hand tool is cool because you can drag it around, move around wherever you want to go. H for hand, if you're up there working on the zoom tool, just H for hand, and you can move it around, or you can hit the space bar and bring up the hand tool as well. So that's great for moving things around. Next down here is go to default colors. There's that teeny tiny black and white box right here that brings up your default colors. Well, if I want default colors, I just hit D for default. D, boom, and it changes it to black and white. It's better than coming over here when you got your screen full size and you can barely see that. It's so much faster just to hit the D key. And then right next to it, the 2 arrows, that's for changing the background and foreground color. So you can switch them back and forth by clicking on that little 2 arrows right there. Well, you can also do that by hitting X. X will change your colors back and forth. Exchange colors. Much, much faster, much easier. And then last but not least, you have the quick selection. Go to brush, select quick select. And what I'm going to do, find my brush here, 10%, let's bring it up to 100. When I'm painting with black, and I normally do a hard edge brush, you can see the difference. If I'm going around almost to the pixel layer, let's do the inside of the bird here real quick. Go to brush, make a smaller brush. Hold the shift key down to get a straight line. Wow. Okay, if I go out of quick selection mode, quick mask mode, you can see what I painted is now red. Out of quick selection or quick mask mode is now in marching ant mode. So you can see what's selected. So paint the face. The face is selected. Command J to put it up on a new layer. And the thing about quick selection, let's get rid of that. Let's paint this over again. Whoops. Q. The shortcut for this, by the way, is Q. So this is selected. Hit Q again. You can see the selection. With the quick mask, you have to change the settings in here. So we'll double click. Color indicates masked area. I want to change to selected area. And if you're painting in like a red object, you click on the color, change your color to say green, click OK, click OK. And now you're painting with green versus red. So if you're painting on a red object, you want to see what you're doing, change the color. All you have to do is double click on the quick mask area and it brings up the color. Let me go back to red because that's what I'm used to. And I have opacity set at 66%. Click OK. Click OK. And we're good to go. That is a super fast run through of the toolbar. Now I know there's a bazillion questions. Feel free to ask them. Going once, going twice.
I have a question, but it's not the toolbar.
Okay.
I forget what you hold down when you have one type of brush and you want to go to a different type of brush, but you want it to be the type of brush you already have. Like I've got a mixer brush and I'm going to a regular brush, but I want to make that regular brush into a mixer brush. You hold down what to do that?
Okay, you want to go from a regular brush to a mixer brush?
Or either way.
Or either way? So if I go to B for brush, let me do this. I'm going to fill him with white. Command, don't save. Command 0. Get rid of these 2 layers. Okay, I am painting B for brush. Change my color to obscene red. And you want to go to the mixer brush. Depending on, in my particular case, my mixer brush is set to A. So if I hit A, it brings up my mixer brush. And if I want to go back to the regular brush, I hit B to my regular brush. If you have them both in the same setting, which is default, like right now I have brush, pencil brush or pencil tool, and color replacement tool. Let's go say I wanted to go to pencil. I would hold Shift B, and that takes me to pencil.
So what I'm thinking of is I have a specialized brush that it's a mixer brush, but I want to use it as just a regular brush.
Then you would have to go to the tools that you had to ask that question, didn't you?
Well, I think it's easy, like except I can't remember what you hold down. It's like, if I want to make a different brush into a mixer brush, I go to mixer brush first, and then I hold down something, I click on the brush that I'm going to.
I don't remember the shortcut for that right off the top of my head.
I was trying everything yesterday, and it works sometimes and not other times, and I don't know what I was doing. I'm going, Mike will have the answer.
Mike doesn't have the answer to that one. I have to research it again. That's a Sandra Pierce trick that she taught.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look up her notes.
Yeah,
notes from her class.
It'll be in her notes for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, and in the chat. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.